So let me ask you directly, do Americans deserve refunds for money collected through tariffs that the Supreme Court ruled illegal? Yes or no?
Congressman, the American people had the money. It was in the U.S. Treasury, and it didn't take it away.
Do you agree that they deserve the money back that the Supreme Court ruled is illegal? Yes or no?
It's not a yes or no question.
On the 20th of February 2026, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that the Trump administration's tariffs were unlawful. The vote crossed ideological lines. 2 Trump appointees joined the majority. The ruling was unambiguous. What happened next was not. The government has $165 to $175 billion sitting in the Treasury collected under a legal authority that no longer exists. And the mechanism for returning it to the people who actually paid it is broken by design. I'm Thomas Breck, 22 years on Capitol Hill. What I'm going to walk you through today is not what was said in that hearing room. It's what wasn't the practical reality of why your $1,800 may never come back.
Now, Mr. Secretary, I want to discuss tariffs, which are hidden taxes that American consumers pay, including businesses. The Supreme Court ruled that this administration's broad tariff policy was unlawful. But American families already paid the price. Small businesses paid it through higher costs, consumers paid it through hidden higher prices, and according to the Yale Budget Lab, the average household paid roughly $1,800 more because of these tariffs. So at a time when you talk about giving relief to workers, temporary relief, on the other hand—
Bessent's central defense rests on one image: the Treasury as a bank that simply follows instructions, not a decision maker. Your bank does not tell you which bills to pay, he says. You tell your bank. It's a clean analogy until you ask the obvious follow-up question. In that analogy, who gave the order to appeal the refund? Horsford already has the answer on the record. The Department of Justice filed to halt an expedited refund on May 29th, and when asked directly whether he participated in those discussions, Bessent said no. So if Treasury didn't make that call, and Treasury is supposedly just executing orders, someone made a $165 billion decision without the Treasury Secretary in the room. That's not how a bank works. That's how an agency avoids owning a decision it doesn't want to defend. Watch what happens when Horsford stops asking about the money and starts asking about the people who actually paid it.
And they are feeling the effect of higher prices. So let me ask you directly, do Americans deserve refunds for money collected through tariffs that the Supreme Court ruled illegal? Yes or no?
Congressman, the American people had the money. It was in the U.S. Treasury, and it didn't take it away.
Do you agree that they deserve the money back that the Supreme Court ruled is illegal? Yes or no?
It's not a yes or no question, because every Democratic Attorney General applied.
The Supreme Court ruled that they were illegal, Mr. Secretary.
I know, but they applied.
Bessent's reference to payers of record is not a deflection invented for this hearing. It is a real and serious legal problem, one that reveals exactly why $175 billion in unlawfully collected revenue is structurally difficult to return, even when a court says it must be. Here is how tariffs actually work. When a shipment of goods enters the United States, the importer of record, typically a large corporation, pays the tariff directly to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. That corporation is the legal payer, but that corporation almost never absorbs the cost itself. It passes it forward through the supply chain to wholesalers, distributors, retailers, and ultimately to the consumer who buys the product at a higher price. By the time the tariff cost reaches the average household, it has passed through multiple layers of commerce, been embedded in retail prices, and disappeared into the ordinary cost of living. The Supreme Court ruling entitles the payers of record, the importers, to refunds, not the households, not the small businesses that bought from those importers at elevated prices, not the consumer who paid $1,800 more for goods over the course of a year. The legal refund flows to the corporation at the top of the chain. What happens after that is entirely voluntary. Horsford's letter to 10 major corporations, Walmart, Home Depot, Target, Amazon, and others, asked them to commit to passing refunds down to consumers and small suppliers. None of those corporations are legally required to do so. The refund mechanism returns money to the entities that can most afford to absorb a loss, and leaves open the question of whether any of it reaches the households that actually felt the price.
Thank you. Secretary Bessent, yes or no? Did you participate in discussions about appealing efforts to speed up tariff refunds?
No.
Treasury helps shape major fiscal policy. Returning roughly $165 billion to businesses and consumers is a major fiscal decision. So why wasn't the Treasury involved?
Again, we act as the payment agent. Your bank does not tell you which bills to pay. You tell your bank which.
Well, from the public's perspective, taxpayers' perspective, the administration is fighting harder to keep their money than to return it. That's why I've introduced the Relief Act, to give automatic refunds within 90 days to the people who paid the tariffs. And that once the refunds are made, that the benefit goes to the consumers that ultimately paid the price in higher cost. The Relief Act creates an automatic refund process, something that this administration has not been working to accomplish, and this would actually address the economic uncertainty that has been caused by these across-the-board tariffs. Not strategic, not in the best interest of American consumers, and it's time that we give the money back to the people who paid it. With that, I yield back.
Bessent said no. He was not involved in the Justice Department's decision to appeal the court order that would have accelerated refunds. And then he offered the bank analogy. Treasury is a payment agent, not a decision maker. Your bank does not tell you which bills to pay. You tell your bank. That analogy has a specific problem that Horsford identified and that deserves to be examined carefully. If Treasury is purely a payment agent executing instructions from whoever gives the order, then the $165 billion refund question is not a Treasury question. It is a question about who gives the instructions. And on May 29th, the Justice Department filed to halt an expedited refund order. Bessent says he was not involved. So the question becomes, who decided to fight the refund in court? And why is the Treasury Secretary, who runs the agency that would process those payments, not in that conversation? This is where Bessent's bank analogy collapses under its own logic. A bank that processes payments on instruction is not responsible for the instructions. But a Treasury Secretary who is simultaneously performing the duties of IRS Commissioner on a legal mandate that expired on the 6th of March 2026 is not simply a bank. He is the statutory authority over trade revenue collection. He can delegate the function, he cannot delegate the legal responsibility that comes with the office. Bessent told Fox News after the Supreme Court ruling that refunds would be a logistical nightmare and could take years to litigate. That statement reflects the genuine complexity of the payer of record problem. Large corporations receive the legal refund claim, and there is no existing mechanism to trace those costs down through supply chains to the households that absorb them. Horsford's Relief Act proposes a 90-day automatic refund process, but it does not resolve the fundamental question of who gets the money once it leaves the Treasury. The payer of record problem exists regardless of the speed of the process. Here is my assessment. The Supreme Court answered the legal question. The tariffs were unlawful. The money must be returned to the payers of record. But the economic question, how $1,800 per household that was absorbed through elevated prices at every level of the supply chain gets back to the families that paid it, has no legal answer. Because the law was not designed for this situation. The Relief Act is a start, but it addresses the speed of refunds to importers, not the path from importers to consumers. And the administration is fighting the speed question in court while leaving the path question entirely unaddressed. The one date Horsford asked for when American families can expect to see their money is the one number Bessent could not give. Not because the logistics are complicated, because giving a date would require committing to a process the administration is simultaneously fighting to delay and a distribution mechanism that does not yet exist. I've seen how Washington works. This isn't it. Thomas Breck Unfiltered. If this breakdown gave you something real, subscribe. No noise, just the record.